Ching, 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 ching. I'm kind of banging the... Thank you. Thank you. Ladies, we are so delighted that you are here with us. We are going to be talking about stepping into the public square. My name is Kim Borchers, and I am the Associate Director of Civic Leadership Engagement at the Policy Circle. And Jill, as we were on the plane together, we were thinking there should be a subtitle. Jill, the subtitle of this should be what? Arranging Marriages?
It should be Arranged Marriages for Your Young Adult Children, because we're also doing that
We're
together.
doing that. And
with our children.
If you are in the CLEAR program, you have a monthly call-in. It's kind of a coaching call that I will do with you. And Jill and I had a call, and we were talking about our kids. And she sent me a picture of Cooper, and I thought, he's kind of cute. And I said, then I sent her a picture of Sydney, and she's like, we got to get these kids together. And we actually did, and we set them up on my daughter's 21st birthday, and they've been dating ever since. So that was in May.
So there was someone Michelle, in this last session who was like, I have a 22-year-old son. I was like, hey, listen, you might be able to get
Yeah, we'll get him connected.
An arranged marriage. If my son Cooper watched this, which he's not going to, Sydney might, but he would kill me.
I know. We talk about this all the time.
But it'll be like the best story at their wedding.
Absolutely. That's what
100%.
That's what we're hoping for.
So,
well, part of what we want to do today, they talked a lot today earlier about storytelling. And I think the best story that we have is real life stories of folks who decided to take the civic leadership engagement model and actually apply it. Now, if you join the CLEAR program, we have one starting in February of next year. What we try to do is baby steps. It kind of puts you in the shallow end, and you kind of slowly get yourself until you're comfortable. Well, Jill Schram is not like that. Jill just jumped into the deep end during her CLEAR class, and she has been swimming like an Olympian over the past 6 months. And I just thought it was really important so she could share her stories with you about the things that she's doing. Because a lot of times when we talk about civics or being politically engaged, everyone automatically assumes that means you run for office. And that is not the case. There are a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes where you don't have to put your name on a ballot. And there are many of you who are sitting in this room, you may never run for office, and that's okay. But there are a myriad of ways that you can be engaged in your local community and make a real difference. And so it's really important that you can hear ways that that can be done. So Jill, we're going to start off just a little bit. If you're a successful businesswoman, and then all of a sudden you hadn't done any of this. I mean, we're not supposed to talk about age, but you're in your 50s. I'm in my 50s, and so you had never been involved in politics. And so, what was the catalyst that you decided to go, hey, I'm going to join the CLEAR program?
So I'm a serial entrepreneur with my husband, and I have started 3 businesses together, and I also have 3 kids. I just like doing threes now, I don't know. So I have 3 kids who are now 23, 21, and almost 18. So I have 1 left at home. And I spent the bulk of my career in the IT space and doing business development. And then I took kind of everyone keeps saying pivot. I took a pivot, and I worked in the music business for about 6 years with my daughter, who was a singer-songwriter. It's the hardest work I've ever done. I got paid nothing.
Her name is Gracie Schram.
Her name is Gracie Schram. She's on Spotify.
She's great.
Anyway, so took a pivot and did that for a period of time. And then after Gracie finished college and wasn't touring so much, and also the world shut down, I was down to 1 kiddo at home, and it was really important for me to just be there. So I knew I had this time where I was like, I'm not really going to work full time. I'm just going to be Lucy Schram's beck and call girl. So I'm doing that, and it's been the biggest blessing. But last fall, before the election, I was like, I'm going to try to meet as many down ballot candidates as I can, which I don't even know why I even thought to do that, but I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to encourage other people to do it. I volunteered to work as a poll worker only because they had things so spread out at our polling place, and most of the poll workers were like 80, like legitimately 80, And then they were walking so slow. And so I was like, I'm going to volunteer. And then everyone's going to be like, get in that dark-haired girl's line. She is moving them through. So I did that. And then I was kind of like, I don't know what the next thing is. And I was invited to be part of CLEAR. And I really believe in my life, like, I believe God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And he equips us for every good work. So in January, I get invited to be part of the CLEAR program, and I'm like, yeah, totally. Jump in. It's perfect. My daughter's going to take AP Gov. We're doing it together. I'm reading the Federalist Papers. I'm like getting 100% on all my tests. And God has a sense of humor, so he's like, perfect. I've given you a few little skills and a little bit more confidence. And so I show up at a school board meeting that was like one of those crazy ones, like on TV. And I was like, what is happening? And I was like, where are the grown-ups here? And so I thought for a second, maybe I should run for school board. But luckily, my former next-door neighbor was sitting behind me, and she said, I'm running for school board. And I was like, awesome, I'm going to help you do that. And so that was kind of the first really foray into anything. Then my neighbor decides to run for mayor, and I host his very first event. I like to host a party, and I was really kind of hesitant at first because I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And also, I don't know any of the players. But through CLEAR, because one of the things you had to do was attend a county commission meeting or a city council meeting, and like, who are your city councilmen? So here's me writing them down. I didn't know any of them. I didn't even know what ward I was in. Like, I just didn't even know what I didn't know. So I kind of got some of that background through the CLEAR program, which was great. So I could figure out who is my county commissioner and how long has our mayor been the mayor? 17 years. So I learned so much, which kind of equipped me for doing kind of the next thing.
Right. Well, and I think what's interesting is as you share that, you didn't even know what you didn't know. And so often we get so caught up with what's happening in Washington, D.C., we have no idea what's happening in our backyard. And I think COVID-19, I think there's a silver lining in everything, even something like COVID. And I think COVID was a real eye-opener for everyone to start asking questions and getting more engaged locally. I mean, when your business has been shut down, your kids aren't going to school, you're looking at this person going, are you elected? Did I vote for you? I mean, when they're on TV, and then you find out, wait a minute, he's not even elected, and he's making decisions for me. So I think this is part of the CLEAR program, is it starts local. We do start with the foundation of the Constitution, but then we really build out your comfort level with what's happening in your local community, because that's where you can make the real dent and change. So one of the things you are working on, so because now everybody knows Jill Schram, she's not an elected official and everybody in her town knows who she is. They're either having a fundraiser at her house. You got involved in a zoning issue. So give us a little background on that.
So I'm just like plugging along, finishing my CLEAR stuff, helping Mike for mayor, run for mayor, and Katie on the school board. And at the end of July, we get a notice in our mailbox that they want to rezone the piece of property in our neighborhood, actually right across we renovated our forever home in 2018, 2019. So we're new to this neighborhood. I'm also on the Homeowners Association board because I got drafted to be part of that. So it's my first election. I totally wanted to have like an inaugural ball. I'm going to do that probably next time. Because wouldn't that be fun? Everyone dresses up like in a gown.
She's very creative.
But anyway, so we get a notice in our mailbox that they want to rezone 10.8 acres to be exact, from R1, which is single family residential, to RP6, high rise, with no buffering, no kind of transition, no step up. I mean, the most massive, the most dense, and directly in our backyard and in our community. And we and a bunch of other people in our neighborhood thought it was a terrible idea. It's not an appropriate land use. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And everyone kind of freaked out and said, someone should do something. And we should get signs and we should get organized. And so I'm Stop Deer Creek High Density girl in my neighborhood. And we've put together kind of a task force and have done neighborhood meetings, and we collected emails. We have 226 homes in our neighborhood, and we have probably 170 homes that have signs in their yard that say Stop Deer Creek High Density. We've got a task force of 8 people who are gearing up to speak at the Planning Commission. We've been delayed lots of times this fall. We thought it was going to be in August, then September, then October. It's Monday, we think. So just getting our neighborhood kind of rallied around that. And the other thing I would say too is, like, being an elected official or not, like, I think being an engaged citizen, and also I think we've lost a sense of community that's one of the things over COVID, especially moving into a neighborhood. I'm the social chair for our neighborhood. You know how many activities we've had this year? 1. They let me have the 4th of July parade. But we didn't do the deck crawl. I was like, why? It's outside. So we haven't had an opportunity. I hadn't had an opportunity to really meet a lot of the people, even though I was on the board, because our meetings were on Zoom. And so that's the silver lining out of this, is that this fight that our neighborhood is engaged in has really created a new sense of community in our neighborhood too, and engagement, which has been fun, but it's been a lot of work.
Well, and I would say one thing, it was mentioned in the previous workshop to mention some ladies who had been in the CLEAR program. A lot of the local elected officials, they never get calls from constituents. They don't hear from anybody. And so this is an example. I mean, Jill, you shared in the last group, she's sometimes been spending 50 hours a week on this project to protect the neighborhood. But I think what's interesting in this is that the Planning Commission isn't used to anybody even being concerned about what's happening with the Planning Commission, because most people don't even know who the commissioners are. What would you say you've been most surprised by all of it, from the school board interactions you've had, helping candidates run, and then now kind of taking on, I mean, you really have taken on this initiative.
Well, a couple things. I think that I've learned a lot. Like, I mean, I didn't know I didn't know what I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know anything about actually, I did know a couple things. When I first moved back to Kansas City, I grew up there, moved back in 1996 from Chicago. And we bought a house, and there was like vacant land with cows next to us. And I was like, development's moving south, that's going to be something. So I looked at what's the master plan for Overland Park, what's going to go there, what is that zoned for. So I did check that in 1996. I didn't think I needed to check it when I moved into our neighborhood that we're in now. It's a 30-year-old neighborhood. It's a golf course community. 2/3 of the golf course is a FEMA floodplain, so it's a good land use for something that floods, because it just floods the fairways and then soaks into the ground. So I didn't check that, but learning about what the master plan is, learning those kinds of things and doing the research, and also just learning how our city works has been really interesting, and really what goes on when while we're not paying attention. Like, stuff is getting passed that we're like, the neighborhoods are like, what? So I think that the couple things that I would say as an encouragement to other people is, you don't have to have it all figured out. Like, I mean, I'd never sent an email to a city councilman. I'd never met my city councilman. I didn't even know who they were until I did CLEAR. I've had 8 city councilmen to my property and walk our yards and the neighboring yards, and have had them to my home and had conversations. And it's also been a big encouragement to other people who are like, I'm against this, I want to do this, but what does it look like to write an email to a city councilman or a planning commissioner? So encouraging others by sharing, like, okay, well, I didn't know how to do it either, but here's an example. I'm like, I'll tell you what I did, and this is, or we've also helped some people draft them. I'm like, so I'll have a quick phone call with someone, like, what's your hot button? They're like, traffic for this issue. I'm like, great, let's draft an email together on traffic. And they're like, that was so helpful, thanks. Now they're ready to go. So helping others and equipping others. But I think that the biggest lesson, which I think is just a life lesson, is like not to be intimidated. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Not to be afraid to make a mistake or look a little foolish or, because it's going to be okay. I mean, like, I'm just figuring it out as I go. So is everyone else. And also not to let the idea that, like, you don't know it all or some, desire to get it all perfect and right. Like, we just need to start making progress. So I tell my kids this all the time. I'm like, the goal is progress, not perfection. I tell them all the time. So I'm like, I was using some of my own advice to just start moving and start doing. And someone asked in the last session, like, how has the neighborhood been? Are there people who are opposed to this, and how has that been? Yes, there are. And it's been okay. And, I didn't know the people at the city, but they do know me. The head city, one of the city staff is always like, oh, hey, Jill. But that's okay. It's totally fine. Like the guy in charge of traffic, Brian, he's like, oh, hi, Jill.
He wished nobody knew his name.
Yeah. Brian and Keith, they're my favorite.
What I love about your story and what you did is that it became personal for you. And that was mentioned earlier today, because you get passionate about things that are personal. I think about when I got involved, and I say politics because I did not think it was political. It was 23 years ago. I was a young mom. I'd left the corporate world to stay at home with my kids. And someone had brought it to my attention that kids could access pornography at the public library. And I kind of thought that was a bad idea. And I thought everybody would agree with me. I just thought people didn't know what was going on. And little did I know that some people thought it was okay. But it was through that process, because what I knew, I was never going to send my kids to the library by themselves. But I knew the library was a hub for a lot of young kids in that neighborhood within the city. Grandparents who were raising their grandkids, they sent it there because they thought they were safe. Single moms who were working 2 and 3 jobs. And I tell you, probably the thing that matters the most to me, it meant a lot to me, because you mentioned sometimes when you get discouraged and you want to throw your hands up and you go, why am I even doing this? And you would get like a note from somebody, thank you so much for doing it. I remember I had a young mom who walked up to me. She was a single mom, and she said, I could never have done this without someone like you caring about my kids, because I'm just trying to pay the bills and put a roof over my head. But I thought to myself, this was about not just my children, it was other kids, and it was my community. And it was those little things, those little nuggets of thank yous that kept you going when you were working on these things. And so I share that with you, because if you get involved on some of these things, you can get exhausted when you work on them and tiring. But if you really believe in it, you have to be connected to it. And that's what the CLEAR program really is about. Find your niche, right? Find the thing that you're passionate about. You may not care about landfills or whatever in the county commission. You know what? City council may really matter to you because you care about public safety. And and you're a business person, a lot of businesses are not coming in there because they're really concerned about public safety in that particular area. So whether it's public safety, public health, public education, if you want to serve on a school board, but a lot of times you don't know what you're interested in until you show up. And the people who show up help make the decisions. That's what's really important. I would also say, and you and I've talked about this, I was so intimidated by the process because I thought, oh, these are elected officials. And then you go to a meeting and you go, these people are making decisions for my family. Wait a minute, there's something wrong with this picture.
This cycle was really fun for me. We just had local elections on Tuesday. And I never knew who I was voting for the water board, which is funny because we're talking about water. I'm like, Missy Smith, Bob Reese. So it was really, and also I never had any political signs in my neighborhood. I got a lot of Stop Deer Creek high density ones, but I never had so many signs. And my kids are like, Mom, it looks ridiculous in front of our house. However, my neighbor's walking her dog the other day, and she's like, oh, I'm so grateful you have all those signs in your yard. I just took a picture. So now I'm like, okay, now I know who to vote for, which is kind of hilarious.
That's what they're for.
And the other thing I would say, just as an anecdote, I think that I think connection is so important. We talked about storytelling and connection and other things, and And I've spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people in our neighborhood, and our neighborhood's 30 years old, and it's starting to turn over with some younger families and stuff. But there's some widowers and some widows in our neighborhood who, through this, I've had a chance to connect with them. I got like a whole fan club of 80-year-old guys, 75 to 82. They love me. They're like my dad. But I was kind of getting beat up at our homeowners association meeting on Monday night. And this little old guy, Jim, he's like, oh, you're doing such a great job. And I was like, thank you. And then I got a couple emails from people who said, I just appreciate that you're willing to stick your neck out. And I'm having that opportunity to do that. I feel like I'm trying to raise my kids to be giraffes, someone who will stick their neck out. We have a lot of little giraffe things at our house that mean something. And this has been an opportunity to model that for my kids. And when they had neighborhood meetings regarding this rezone, my oldest daughter lives in Sweden, and she was in town, and she's like, oh, you're spending so much time, 3 days in a row on my last few days here, you're going to be at this stupid neighborhood meeting. And I was like, well, why don't you come? And then my 17-year-old killed it at the meeting. She's like raising her hand and asking a question. And so while it's been a lot of work, and I don't know, we might not win, we might lose, and they might build a huge 5-story building in my backyard on Sparkle Pond, which is what we named it. But that's okay, because you know what? I'm using my voice and I'm using my skills. And that's the other thing too, is like, if you feel like I'm not qualified or how does my experience relate to this? I mean, I think God uses us in lots of ways, and just taking the first step has been, I think, the biggest thing that I've shown myself too. And also I'm transitioning. I'm about to be an empty nester, and I don't know what I'm going to do next. It's going to be exciting.
I'm going to keep her busy. Before we kind of wrap up, do you guys have any questions for us? Anybody have a question? Yes.
First, Kim, I'm Quintel Lindsay.
Hi. So
I'm happy to see all the women who I saw, the children, graduates, and what they're doing. So it's really exciting. A couple of things. Jill, you got a book or a podcast, and a group of us was jotting down. God doesn't call the qualified. God qualifies the call. Start moving, start doing. Progression, not perfection. Giraffe, stick your neck out. And I think those are quick but smart things to tell them, to encourage them. So I hope you run for office. And for you to be that popular in the neighborhood. I had another question, Kim, as well. We were talking last night just about assassination of character.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that bothers me the most, because there are a lot of great people I know, and they are so smart, and they will be great in office, but they're not perfect, and no one is.
Yeah.
And so often, how do we encourage people who we know to be great leaders, like maybe some happier past or when they were younger, because I think so often we get so into people, people are so nasty. I've even asked Sylvie, where are you, to run. And a person like her, she cares so much about people.
Yeah.
She wouldn't like mess like that. There's just good people that if she could get all of us from different backgrounds, different ideas, she would be a great person in our legislature.
Yeah.
Person in Illinois or DC.
Yeah.
But how do we get great people who just don't like all of the drama that comes with all of that into politics? Because I think that's the holdout on the politics. They just don't want to take their family
Through that,
just
yeah.
assassination of
Yeah.
it. And I'm just, that's just me. That ticks me off.
Yeah.
Because I don't care, honestly, I don't care what my doctor does in his private way. But if he has a degree to be a good doctor,
Yeah.
that's the doctor I want to go
Yeah.
to. But a lot of things I think it just is too nasty. I know that's a long
You know what, Quintella, I think that's a great question. So how do you deal with character assassination? And I think a large part of this has to be, you have to be very grounded and know who you are, and you have to surround yourself with a really good support system. I also think you have to walk into politics knowing, eyes wide open. But I would also say, I think we live in a bit of a fairy tale world, thinking it hasn't always been that way. I think of course, our founders didn't have to deal with the internet, but if you go back and look, some of the founders and some of the writings, what they would do in newspapers under anonymous names, and the other thing is if people didn't like what you did, they took you out in the front lawn and you had duels. I mean, so what do we do now? We just get on Twitter and we go back and forth and say things about people. I also think we've set people up. We say we don't want perfect, but yet when we look at someone's past and we think, oh, well, wow. I mean, part of it is the image that you portray, right? And when I was the appointments director for the governor, and I would say to everyone, go back home and take a look in your local community and see if there's a local commission that one of you are elected. That's one way to be involved, is to get appointed to a board or commission. But I used to tell people who I would interview, I said, is there anything in your background that can embarrass you, your family, or the governor? And I said, I'm not looking for perfect people. I just don't want to be blindsided, right? Because if they were looking for perfect people, I wouldn't have been working. None of us would, right? So I think there are ways that you prepare yourself to run for office in that manner. And you're right, it's very frustrating when people say things, but I have become much more bold when people make comments, especially about people who I know personally, and they will say something, and I will say, where did you hear that? Well, I read that in the paper. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I know this person, and that's not true. So I think we have to be bolder. And I would also just say, running for office is not for everybody. I mean, if you get your feelings hurt really quick, do not run for office. It is not a place. Now, I'm laughing, you have giraffe. At our house, it's the turtle. You notice the turtle doesn't go anywhere if its neck doesn't stick out. So you got to stick your neck out if you want to move forward. So I think my kids would have probably appreciated the giraffe versus the turtle example. But I think that's a really great question.
The other thing I would add to that, too, as I've watched my friends run for office this last cycle, I mean, it was brutal. One of my friends who was running for school board, who ended up pulling out, had threats against her kids that she had to take to the police. I mean, it's brutal. So what I would say, if you have friends who are doing it, I mean, I have been, like, we had a group of prayer warriors who were praying around those people, and I'm like, if you see someone who's running for office, become an encourager. I have a good friend who was the Attorney General for Missouri. We politically totally opposite spectrums with me, but I'm friends with him and his wife, and I know them. And when he ran for Senate, I said, I'm going to pray for your family, I'm going to pray for your marriage during this whole thing. And I just, like, it was, sometimes I would send them a text at 8 in the morning, sometimes at 4 in the afternoon, like, but I think that if you see that, like, that's the people that you need. Those people need encouragement. And I will tell you, like, watching my friend Katie run for school board, I mean, I was like, I got your back. We got your back. We got your back. And you know what? She made it. And her husband Dave said to me on Tuesday night, I was at her little party afterwards, and he's like, I so appreciate your prayers and your encouragement for our family. And I told them, I'm like, I'm so grateful that people will step up and run, because, you know, it's hard.
Well, and you found your niche in that, right? That was that word of encouragement. We just have to think about what our gifts and talents and how they can serve other people. As we kind of wrap up, I want to pull a story that Sylvie had in her book, and I love the name of it, Trust Your Voice. In it is a story that's been kind of repeated in different ways, but it was a lady showed up on a work site and saw 3 individuals laying bricks, and the first person she went up to, she said, well, what do you do? And the person said, well, I'm a bricklayer. And the second person she went up to a couple hours later, she said, well, what do you do? And this person says, I build walls. It's a beautiful wall. And the third person that she walked up to, she said, what do you do? And that person said, I'm building a cathedral. They were all doing the same job, right? But it was the way they viewed that job. And so I shared that story with you because I think our cathedrals can be our communities. And if we would look at our communities as a cathedral and what role we play in that, a cathedral was not ever built by one person. It was built by all of us. And so my challenge to you, and Quintella, I think you just posed a great question, is when you leave here today, the question is, what will you do to make your community a better place to live in and something that you can be proud of? And my hopes are, as Sylvia always has her call to actions, you always have to have a call to action if you're at the policy circle. One, if you are not part of a policy circle group, become part of one. Because that group of women, you guys can be the solution for your community. If you are not if you've not participated in the CLEAR program, I would invite you. We have a class in February, and you've got to sign up by the end of the year. But I love it when you sign up early. It makes my life so much easier. But it's just a great way. I mean, I look in this room of women who I know because of the policy circle who live in different parts of the country. I mean, Melinda was in CLEAR. She's a Kansas girl. She was a K-State cheerleader. Well, Jill was a K-State cheerleader. I mean, this connection, all roads lead through Kansas, everybody. You just need to get that figured out. But the network of women that you get to meet who are also passionate about this issue, seize that. Because you cannot get that in a lot of places. So that is my challenge to you. Sign up, lead a policy circle, or I'd love to see your name on the list for CLEAR. I'd love to work with you. And if you have any more questions for Jill, please feel free to ask her, and I'm always available. You can reach out to me. But I want to thank you for coming to this workshop. We appreciate you guys.
And you also, maybe you could set up your adult children in an arranged marriage. You don't know who you're going to meet here.
I have a 16-year-old son.